The ship appeared from nowhere. One moment, the space at the edge of Concord territory was empty. The next moment, a flash of light cut through the darkness and a vessel emerged. It was not a beautiful ship. It was gray and angular, covered in plates of metal that looked thick and heavy. Strange tubes pointed outward from its hull. The design was rough, almost angry, like the ship had been built by creatures who expected to fight. Ambassador Vilthan watched from the observation deck of his diplomatic cruiser. The serenity of ages. His four eyes blinked slowly as he studied the alien vessel. The translator systems had already decoded the markings on its hull. Un's Defiance. A human ship. The first to ever reach Concord space. Vilthan had studied Earth for many years. The Concord had watched humanity since they first launched primitive rockets into their own atmosphere. That was barely 2 centuries ago. 2 centuries. The thought made Vilthan uncomfortable. His own species, the Kethmari, had taken 11,000 years to develop faster than light travel. Humans had done it in less than 200. They were fast learners. Too fast. His assistant, a young Kethmari named Polvek, approached with a data tablet. The assistant's blue skin was pale with nervousness. First contact with a new species was always significant, but this contact was different. The Council had been arguing about Earth for decades. Some wanted to welcome humans into the Concord. Others wanted something else entirely. Ambassador, Polvik said, the human vessel is transmitting a greeting. They wish to establish peaceful communication. Vilthan nodded slowly. Of course they do. Respond with standard diplomatic protocols. Tell them we welcome their arrival and wish to learn about their species. As Polvek hurried away, Vilthan continued to stare at the human ship. It was small compared to his cruiser. Its weapons were primitive kinetic projectiles and basic energy cannons. A single Concord patrol vessel could destroy it without difficulty. And yet something about the Defiance made him uneasy. Perhaps it was the name. What kind of species named their first diplomatic vessel Defiance? A species that expected resistance. A species that was ready to fight for its place in the galaxy. Vilthan pushed the thought aside. He was being paranoid. The humans were simply young and eager. Their aggressive naming conventions meant nothing. Still, protocol was protocol. Before any diplomatic exchange, the Concord required a biological scan of new species. It was a simple procedure. The scan would analyze the crew of the Defiance, their physical structure, their genetic code, their basic biological functions. This information would help the Concord understand what kind of species they were dealing with. In 4,000 first contacts, the scan had never revealed anything surprising. Species fell into predictable categories. Herbivores were usually peaceful and cooperative. Omnivores were more complex, but still manageable. The rare predator species required careful handling, but the Concord had protocols for that too. Vilthan activated the scanning system. It was passive technology. The humans would not even know it was happening. Invisible beams of energy swept across the Defiance, reading the biological signatures of everyone aboard. The process took only moments. Vilthan looked at the results on his personal display. He read the first line of data. Then he read it again. His 4 hearts, which usually beat in perfect rhythm, stuttered and stopped for a full second. This was wrong. The equipment must be broken. He ordered a second scan. The results were identical. A third scan. Still the same. Vilthan's hands began to shake. In his 140 years of diplomatic service, he had never seen biological data like this. The numbers were impossible. They described a creature that should not exist, could not exist, according to everything the Concord knew about life in the galaxy. He read through the data again, forcing himself to understand each piece of information. Human cellular, Regeneration was 3 times faster than the galactic average. Their wounds healed in days that would take other species weeks. Their immune systems were not simple defense mechanisms. They were adaptive weapons that learned from every infection, every poison, every threat. A disease that killed a human today would find itself destroyed by that human's children tomorrow. Their bones were dense and strong, built to survive impacts that would shatter the skeletons of most species. Their muscles operated at efficiency levels that the Concord scientists had declared biologically impossible without cybernetic enhancement. They could run for hours without stopping. They could survive temperature extremes that would kill almost any other creature. But it was the brain data that made Leviathan feel true fear. Human neural architecture was not stable. It was changing, evolving, growing more complex with each generation. The Concord's computers projected their cognitive development forward in time, and the results were terrifying. Within 300 years, humans would surpass every known species in pure intellectual capability. 300 years was nothing. Leviathan would still be alive in 300 years. And there was more. The genetic analysis had found markers buried deep in human DNA. Markers that the Concord's biological databases automatically flagged with the highest possible. Warning: aggression, persistence, pack bonding, territorial dominance. These were not the traits of a cooperative species. These were the traits of an apex predator, a creature designed by evolution to hunt, to fight, to kill, and to never, ever stop. The database classification blinked on his screen in red letters. Death World Origin, Apex Predator Indicators, Extinction Class, Threat Potential. Leviathan stood frozen at his display for what felt like hours. The human ship floated peacefully in the void, waiting for diplomatic contact. The crew inside had no idea they had just been scanned. They had no idea that an ambassador of the Galactic Concord was staring at their biological profile with the kind of horror usually reserved for discovering a plague ship. These creatures were monsters. They were nightmares wrapped in soft skin and friendly smiles. And they had built starships. They had crossed the void between stars. They were here. Polvek returned to the observation deck. Ambassador, the humans are requesting a visual communication. They wish to speak with you directly. Their captain is a female named Sarah Chun. Should I establish the connection? Leviathan did not respond. He was thinking about his children, his grandchildren, the future that suddenly seemed much darker than it had an hour ago. Ambassador? Polvek asked, confused by his superior's silence. Leviathan finally moved. He closed the biological data and sealed it with his personal encryption. Then he turned to his assistant with an expression that made the young Kethmari step backward in fear. Cut all communication with the human vessel, Leviathan ordered. Do not respond to their transmissions. Do not acknowledge their presence. But Ambassador, they will think we are hostile. Transmit an emergency signal to the High Council. Priority 1. Use the old codes. The ones we have not used since the Devourer Wars. Polvek's face went white. Sir, those codes are only for extinction-level threats. Leviathan looked out at the Defiance one last time. Somewhere inside that ship, a human named Sarah Chun was waiting patiently for an answer. She probably thought this was a moment of hope. A new beginning for her species, though she had no idea what was about to happen. Send the message, Leviathan said quietly. Tell the Council. Abandon first contact. Initiate Omega quarantine. Tell them the humans are not what we assumed. Tell them we may already be too late. Kathaloon stood alone in her private chamber, surrounded by darkness. The room had no decorations. No furniture except a single platform where she could rest her ancient body. The walls were black stone, cold and silent. This was where she came to think. This was where she came to remember Dot. And tonight, she was remembering the worst time in galactic history. 12,000 years ago, there had been another species like humanity. They were called the Vrankai, and they had been magnificent. Tall and powerful, with brilliant minds and fierce hearts. They had risen from their homeworld with incredible speed, building an empire that spanned 100 star systems in just a few centuries. Cthulhu had been young then, barely 500 years old. She remembered the first time she saw a Vrankai ship. It had been beautiful in a terrible way, all sharp angles and dark metal. The Vrankai did not build things to be pretty. They built things to be effective. At first, the galaxy had welcomed them. New species were always interesting. The Vrankai were smart and capable, and they seemed eager to trade and cooperate. Many believed they would become valuable partners. They were wrong. The Vrankai were predators. Not like the small predators that existed on many worlds, careful hunters who killed only what they needed. The Vrankai were something else entirely. They were driven by instincts so powerful that cooperation was impossible. They saw other species not as partners, but as resources. Not as equals, but as prey. The first war began when the Vrankai attacked a peaceful civilization called the Endari. The Endari had done nothing wrong. They had simply existed in space that the Vrankai wanted. Within 5 years, the Endari were extinct. Every single one of them. 17 billion lives erased forever. Then the Vrankai moved on to the next species. And the next. And the next. Cthulhu closed her eyes, but she could not stop the memories. She remembered the burning worlds, the desperate battles, the countless dead. Species that had existed for millions of years were wiped out in months. Ancient civilizations were reduced to ash and silence. The remaining species had banded together. They formed the first version of what would become the Concord. They fought the Vrankai with everything they had. The war lasted 800 years. When it finally ended, 90% of all spacefaring life in the galaxy was dead. Entire regions of space were empty graveyards, filled with the wreckage of ships and the bones of worlds. The Vrankai were destroyed completely, absolutely, finally destroyed, but the cost had been almost everything. The survivors made a promise. Never again. Never again would they allow a predator species to reach the stars. Never again would they watch helplessly while monsters consumed the galaxy. And so they created the protocols. The secret protocols that only the founding species knew about. When the Concord found a world developing intelligent life, they studied it carefully. If the dominant species showed predator traits, aggression, persistence, pack-hunting behavior, the world was marked for sterilization. Not immediately. The Concord would watch and wait, hoping the species would develop away from their violent nature. But if they continued toward space travel, if they began to reach for the stars, the Concord would act out quietly, secretly. A disease that killed only the target species. A natural disaster that seemed like terrible luck. An asteroid redirected just slightly. The galaxy never knew. The species never knew. They simply died, and the threat was ended. In 12,000 years, the Concord had sterilized over 400 worlds. 400 species that might have become the next Vrankai. 400 threats that were eliminated before they could grow. Cthulhu had voted for every single sterilization. She had told herself it was necessary. She had told herself she was protecting the galaxy. She had told herself the blood on her hands was the price of peace. But 200 years ago, something had changed. She had been assigned to observe a small blue planet called Earth. The dominant species there, humanity, had been flagged for sterilization. Their genetic profile was almost identical to the Vrankai. Aggression, persistence, pack bonding, all the warning signs were there. The recommendation was clear: sterilize the planet before they developed space travel. Kathaloon had traveled to Earth's system personally. She had watched humanity from the shadows of their outer planets. She had studied them, waiting for the right moment to give the order. But the more she watched, the more confused she became. Yes, humans were violent. They fought wars constantly. They killed each other over territory and resources and ideas. Their history was written in blood and fire. But they also did something that the Rankai had never done. They felt guilty about it. Kathaloon had watched humans build monuments to their own victims. She had seen them create art about the horror of war. She had observed their philosophers and teachers struggling to make their species better, kinder, more peaceful. She had listened to their stories and songs, and so many of them were about the cost of violence, the tragedy of hatred, the hope for a better future. The Rankai had never felt guilty. They had never questioned their nature. They had killed and conquered and consumed because that was what they were, and they had never wondered if they should be something else. Humans were different. Humans carried the same predator instincts, but they fought against them. Every day, in 1,000 small ways, they chose to be better than their nature demanded. Kathaloon had filed her report 200 years ago. She had recommended delaying the sterilization. She had asked for more time to study this strange, contradictory species. The Council had agreed, mostly because Earth was far from Concord space and posed no immediate threat. Let the Valkyrie observer watch them a little longer. There was no rush. Now, 2 centuries later, humanity had arrived at their doorstep, and the Council was ready to make the same choice they had made 400 times before. Kathaloon opened her eyes. The darkness of her chamber pressed around her like a weight. She was 4,000 years old. She had watched civilizations rise and fall. She had made decisions that shaped the fate of the galaxy. She had killed billions with a single vote, telling herself it was necessary. But she was tired of being a monster to prevent monsters. Tomorrow, she would address the Council. She would tell them the truth, all of it. The sterilizations, the hidden genocide, the secret history that only the founding species knew. She would show them what the Concord really was, beneath its peaceful surface. And then she would tell them about humanity, about the guilt they carried, about the choice they made every day to be better than their blood demanded, about the small, flickering hope that predators could learn to be something else. It might not work. The Council might vote for war anyway. Fear was powerful, and 12,000 years of fear was nearly impossible to overcome. But Kathaloon had spent 4,000 years watching the galaxy. She had seen enough death. She had caused enough death. Maybe it was time to try something different. Maybe it was time to believe that people, even predators, could change. She thought about the human ship floating in Concord space. The Defiance. Inside that vessel, a woman named Sarah Chun was waiting for an answer. She did not know that her entire species was being judged. She did not know that ancient beings were debating whether she and her kind should be allowed to exist. She was just waiting, patiently, for someone to talk to her. Kathaloon made her decision. Tomorrow, she would reveal everything. She would risk her position, her reputation, and possibly her life. She would tell the galaxy the truth and let them decide what kind of civilization they wanted to be. Because if she had learned anything from watching humanity, it was this: the measure of a species was not what they were capable of doing. It was what they chose not to do. The Chamber of Accord had not seen an emergency session in 600 years. The Great Hall floated at the heart of the Concord's capital station, a massive sphere of crystal and light that could hold 10,000 representatives. Today, only 12 beings sat in the inner circle. They were the leaders of the 12 founding species, the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the known galaxy. They had come because Ambassador Vialthan had used codes that should never be used. Codes that meant something terrible had happened. Vilefin stood at the center of the chamber, feeling very small. Around him, the 12 leaders waited in silence. Some were massive creatures, larger than buildings. Others were tiny, no bigger than his hand. One was not truly physical at all, just a cloud of glowing energy that pulsed with ancient thoughts. All of them were staring at him. "Show us," said the Valkyrie representative. The Valkyrie were the eldest of all species. They had guided the Concord for millennia, their wisdom and patience holding the galaxy together through countless crises. Their representative today was Cthulhu, a being so old that she had been alive when the Concord was first formed. Her body was tall and thin, covered in silver scales that seemed to shimmer with their own light. Her eyes were deep pools of darkness that held secrets Vilefin could not imagine. He took a breath and activated the display. The biological data from the Defiance appeared in the air above him, projected in light that everyone could see. He watched the 12 leaders read the information. He watched their expressions change. The Drathine representative, a massive creature with armored plates covering its body, made a sound of disbelief. The energy being flickered violently, its light turning from blue to angry red. The Methkai ambassador, a small creature with 6 legs and delicate wings, actually fled to the far side of the chamber. "This is not possible," said the Drathine. "These numbers are wrong. No biological creature can have these capabilities." "I performed the scan 3 times, Vilefin said. The results were identical each time. The data is accurate. Their cellular regeneration alone," said another representative, her voice shaking. "They heal faster than our best medical technology can repair us. And their immune systems, they do not just fight disease. They adapt to it. They learn. Every infection makes them stronger. Look at the bone density," someone else added. "Look at the muscle efficiency. These creatures were built for violence. They were designed by their planet to survive anything." The chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted over each other. Some demanded more information. Others demanded action. The word threat was spoken again and again, each time louder than the last. But Cthulhu, the ancient Valkyrie, said nothing. She simply studied the data with those deep, dark eyes. Vilefin raised his hand, and the chamber slowly grew quiet. "There is more," he said. "The most important data is not about their bodies. It is about their minds." He changed the display. New information appeared: neural mapping, cognitive analysis, evolutionary projections. "Human brains are not static," Vilefin explained. "They are still evolving. Each generation is slightly more intelligent than the last. Their neural connections are growing more complex. Their problem-solving capabilities are increasing." He paused, letting the weight of his next words settle over the chamber. "Our computers have projected their development. In 300 years, their average intelligence will exceed every known species in the Concord." Silence. Complete, absolute silence. The energy being spoke for the first time. Its voice was like thunder rolling through mountains. 300 years. That is nothing. Many of us in this chamber will still be alive in 300 years. "Yes," Vilefin said. "We will live to see them surpass us. All of us." The Drathine slammed one massive limb against the floor. "Enough. Show us the genetic markers. Show us what they truly are." Vilefin hesitated. He had hoped to avoid this part, but he could not hide the truth. Not from the council. He changed the display one final time. The genetic analysis appeared. Red warning indicators flashed around key sections of the human DNA sequence. The database had flagged dozens of markers traits that evolution had built into. Humanity over millions of years taught extreme aggression potential, persistence hunting capability, pack bonding and tribal loyalty, territorial dominance behavior. pain tolerance far beyond normal parameters, adrenaline response systems designed for combat, fear suppression under threat conditions. And at the bottom of the analysis, in letters that glowed bright red, Apex Predator classification, Death World origin confirmed. They come from a world that tried to kill them, Wilson said quietly. Their planet was not kind. It was not gentle. It was a world of predators and disasters and constant death. And humanity did not just survive. They conquered. They became the greatest predators their world had ever seen. They hunted every other species to extinction or submission. They changed their own planet's climate. They bent nature itself to their will. The Methkai representative had returned to her seat, but she was shaking so badly that her wings could barely keep her stable. They are monsters, she whispered. They are exactly what we have always feared. They are persistence hunters, Kathaloon said. Her voice was calm, but something dark moved behind her eyes. Something like memory. Something like old fear. I have not heard that term in a very long time. The chamber fell silent again. Everyone knew what persistence hunting meant. It was the most terrifying form of predation in the galaxy. Most predators use speed or strength or surprise to catch their prey. Persistence hunters use none of these things. They simply followed. They tracked. They walked after their prey for hours, for days, for weeks if necessary. They did not need to be faster. They did not need to be stronger. They only needed to never stop. Eventually, the prey would tire. Eventually, the prey would slow down. And the persistence hunter would still be there, walking forward, never stopping, never giving up. It was a hunting method that drove prey insane with fear. How could you escape something that never stopped chasing you? We must destroy them, the Drathine said, before they become too strong, before they learn too much. We must end this threat now. War, agreed the energy being. Immediate and total war. Sterilize their homeworld. Eliminate their colonies. Leave nothing behind. Vilthan felt sick. He had expected this reaction. He had feared it. But hearing the words spoken aloud made them terribly real. We cannot simply destroy an entire species, he said. They have done nothing wrong. They came in peace. They asked for friendship. They do not need to do anything wrong, the Drathine replied. Their existence is the threat. Their potential is the danger. Look at the data, Ambassador. Look at what they will become. Do you want your children to live in a galaxy ruled by these creatures? The debate continued for hours. Representatives argued and shouted and threatened. Some demanded genocide. Others called for quarantine. A few suggested trying to make peace, but their voices were drowned out by fear. Through it all, Kathaloon remained silent. She watched. She listened. And in her ancient eyes, memories stirred. Memories of another time. Another predator species. Another war that had nearly destroyed everything. She remembered what the Concord had done to survive that war. She remembered the price they had paid. And she wondered if they would have to pay it again. Finally, she raised one silver hand. The chamber immediately fell silent. When a Velkori elder spoke, everyone listened. We cannot decide this today, Kathaloon said. This is too important. We must study these humans more carefully. We must understand them before we act. We understand enough, the Drathine growled. No, Kathaloon said. Her voice was soft but carried absolute authority. We understand nothing. We have data. Data is not understanding. Data is not wisdom. She stood, her tall form casting a shadow across the chamber. I will address the council tomorrow. I will share information that has been hidden for a very long time. Information that may change how we see this situation. She turned to leave, then paused and looked back at Vilthan. Keep the human ship waiting, she said. Do not engage with them. Do not attack them. Simply wait. For how long? Vialthan asked. Cathalun's eyes were filled with sadness and secrets. Until we decide whether to become monsters ourselves. The council did not reveal their secrets. Not yet. Instead, they voted for something else. A test. They would present humanity with an impossible situation and watch how they responded. The Drathine had proposed it, and even Cathalun had agreed. If humans were truly different from the Vrankai, this test would prove it. If they were not different, then at least the council would know before making their final decision. Ambassador Vialthan was given his orders. He did not like them, but he obeyed. 3 days after first contact, a fleet of Concord warships surrounded the Un's Defiance. 20 vessels, each one powerful enough to destroy the human ship in seconds. They formed a perfect circle around the small gray vessel, their weapons powered, but not yet aimed. Captain Sarah Chun watched the alien ships through her bridge's view screen. She was a small woman with short black hair and calm eyes. Her crew looked nervous, scared, but Chun showed no fear. She had spent her entire career preparing for moments like this. Moments when everything could go wrong. They're hailing us, said her communications officer. Ambassador Vialthan is requesting a direct conversation. Put him through, Chum said. The view screen flickered, and an alien face appeared. Vialthan had blue skin and 4 eyes. He looked like something from a nightmare, but his expression was familiar. Chum had seen that expression before on the faces of politicians and diplomats back on Earth. It was the expression of someone delivering bad news. Captain Chun, Vialthan said, I must inform you of a serious matter. I'm listening. Ambassador. Vialthan's 4 eyes blinked slowly. Humanity has committed an act of aggression against the Concord. Your colony on the world, you call New Haven, has been established on sacred territory belonging to the Drathine people. This is a violation of galactic law. Chun's eyebrows rose slightly. We weren't aware of any territorial claims. Our survey showed the planet was uninhabited. The planet is not inhabited, Vialthan agreed. But it is sacred. It has religious significance to the Drathine that predates your species' existence. Your presence there is an insult to their faith and their culture. Chun was silent for a moment. She had 50,000 colonists on New Haven, farmers and engineers and teachers and children. They had built homes there. They had buried their dead there. It was their world now. What does the Concord require? She asked. Immediate and complete evacuation of New Haven. All humans must leave within 30 standard days. All structures must be demolished. The planet must be restored to its original condition. And if we refuse? Vialthan's expression did not change. Then the Concord will have no choice but to declare war on humanity. Your species will be classified as a hostile threat to galactic peace. Your worlds will be sterilized. Your people will be eliminated. The bridge of the Defiance went completely silent. Every officer stared at the screen, unable to believe what they were hearing. Chun's face remained calm. I see. May I have time to consult with Earth? You have 6 hours, Vialthan said. Choose wisely, Captain. The transmission ended. Chun sat in her command chair for a long moment, thinking. Her first officer, a tall man named Jackson, leaned close to her. Captain, he whispered, this has to be a mistake. We need to fight. We can't just abandon 50,000 people. We're not abandoning anyone, Chun said quietly. And we're not fighting. Not yet. She stood and addressed her crew. Everyone remained calm. We have 6 hours. Let's use them wisely. The hours that followed were the most important in human history. Though the crew of the Defiance did not know it, Chun did not rage. She did not threaten. She did not beg. Instead, she did something that the Concord's leaders had not predicted that she asked questions. She requested another communication with Vilefin. When he answered, she began speaking in a voice that was gentle and curious. Ambassador, I want to understand. Can you tell me about the religious significance of New Haven? What does the planet mean to the Drathine? Vilefin hesitated. This was not the response he had expected. The details are not relevant to your decision. They are relevant to me, Chun said. If we have caused offense, I want to understand how. If we have violated something sacred, I want to know what it means to the people we have hurt. She asked more questions. She asked about Drathine culture, their history, their beliefs. She asked if there was any way to share the planet, perhaps. The humans could live in one region while the sacred areas remained untouched. She asked about reparations, about cultural exchange, about anything that might bridge the gap between their peoples. Vilefin answered her questions, though his answers were vague and evasive. The truth was, there was no sacred significance. The entire situation was a lie, designed to see how humanity would respond to impossible demands. But Vilefin found himself uncomfortable with the deception. This woman was not angry or afraid. She was genuinely trying to find peace. Finally, when Chum had asked every question she could think of, Vilefin delivered the final verdict. There could be no compromise. The colonists must leave or there would be war. Chum nodded slowly. I understand. Please give me 1 hour to prepare our response. The transmission ended again. For 60 minutes, Chun sat alone in her ready room. She wrote messages to her family on Earth. She reviewed the crew manifest of the Defiance. She thought about 50,000 colonists who had trusted humanity's leaders to keep them safe, and she made her decision. When she returned to the bridge, she ordered a transmission on all frequencies, not just to Vilefin, but to every ship in the Concorde fleet. To anyone who might be listening, this is Captain Sarah Chun of the UN's Defiance, speaking to the Galactic Concorde. In the Chamber of Accord, the 12 leaders watched her image appear on their screens. Kathaloon leaned forward, her ancient eyes fixed on the small human woman. We have received your ultimatum, Chun continued. You have demanded that we abandon 50,000 of our people. You have threatened to destroy our entire species if we refuse. She paused, and her voice grew softer. I want you to know that I understand fear. Humanity knows fear very well. We fear each other. We fear the unknown. We fear what we might become if we let our worst instincts control us. Our history is filled with terrible things we have done to ourselves because we were afraid. The council listened in silence. But we have also learned that fear is not wisdom. Acting from fear leads to destruction of others and of ourselves. We have learned this lesson again and again, written in the blood of our ancestors. Chun's eyes seemed to look directly at everyone watching. You fear us. I understand. We come from a violent world. We carry violence in our hearts. But we are not slaves to our nature. Every day, we choose to be better. Every generation, we try to learn from the mistakes of the past. We are not perfect. We may never be perfect. But we are trying. She stood straighter, and her voice grew firm. We will not abandon our people on New Haven. If you attack them, we will defend them. The Defiance will fight. We will lose. We will die. Your weapons are more powerful than ours, and your ships are faster and stronger. The Drathine representative made a sound of triumph. This was what they had expected. Humans would fight. Humans would reveal their true predator nature. But Chun was not finished. We will fight, she said, but not to conquer, not to destroy. We will fight because we do not abandon our own. We will fight because defending the helpless is worth dying for. And when we are gone, we hope you will remember that you had a choice. You could have talked to us. You could have worked with us. You could have given us a chance to prove that we are more than our genetics." Tears appeared in her eyes, but her voice remained steady. "If you choose war, you will destroy us. But you will also become what you fear. You will become predators who kill because they are afraid, not because they must. And you will have to live with that choice forever." She reached for the transmission controls. "This is Captain Sarah Chan, signing off. We are raising our shields and powering our weapons. Not to attack, to defend. We will wait for your decision." The transmission ended. In the chamber of accord, no one spoke. The 12 leaders stared at empty screens, trying to process what they had just witnessed. They had expected rage. They had expected threats. They had expected a predator to bare its teeth. Instead, they had seen something else entirely. They had seen a woman willing to die rather than abandon her principles. And for the first time in 12,000 years, the council did not know what to do next. Cathalune moved before anyone could stop her. While the council sat in stunned silence, the ancient Valkyrie walked to the central communication terminal. Her silver fingers danced across the controls with a speed that surprised everyone watching. She was 4,000 years old, but in that moment, she moved like someone half her age. "What are you doing?" the Drathine representative demanded, rising from his seat. "What I should have done centuries ago," Cathalune replied. She activated a transmission not to the Defiance, not to the Concorde fleet, but to every world in the galaxy. Every station, every ship, every being with a receiver capable of hearing her voice. And then she began to share files. The hidden files. The secret files. The ones that only the founding species had ever seen. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched as history rewrote itself before their eyes. They saw records of the Vrankai War, the true records. Not the sanitized versions taught in schools. They saw the devastation, the genocide, the horror of facing a predator species that could not be reasoned with. But then they saw something else. Something that had been hidden for 12,000 years. They saw the sterilization protocols. They saw the list of 400 worlds, 400 species, 400 civilizations that had been quietly erased because they showed predator traits. Diseases engineered to kill only specific genetic profiles. Asteroids redirected to cause extinction events. Plagues that left no survivors. The galaxy had been told these were natural disasters. Tragic accidents. The random cruelty of an uncaring universe. Now they learned the truth. The Concorde, their peaceful, benevolent Concorde, had committed genocide on a scale that dwarfed anything in recorded history. The reaction was immediate and explosive. On Valkyrie Prime, crowds gathered outside government buildings, demanding explanations. On Methkai worlds, the delicate beings wept in the streets, unable to comprehend what their leaders had done. The Drathine fleet that surrounded the Defiance began receiving transmissions from home, confused, angry, horrified transmissions from families, asking if this was true. In the Chamber of Accord, chaos erupted. "You have destroyed us," the Drathine representative roared, lunging toward Cathalune. "You have destroyed everything we built." Guards intercepted him before he could reach her. Cathalune watched calmly, showing no fear. "I have destroyed lies," she said. "I have destroyed secrets. What happens next is up to you." She turned back to the communication terminal and spoke again to the galaxy. "My name is Cathalune. I am 4,000 years old. I have served the Concorde since its founding. I have voted for every sterilization. I have the blood of billions on my hands." Her voice was steady, but her eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. "I cannot undo what I have done. I cannot bring back the species we destroyed. But I can tell you why I am speaking now. She played Captain Chun's message again. The entire galaxy heard the human woman's words. They heard her acknowledge humanity's violent nature. They heard her speak of fear and choice and the struggle to be better. They heard her offer to die rather than abandon her principles. For 12,000 years, Cathalun said, we have told ourselves that predator species cannot be trusted. We have told ourselves that they must be destroyed before they destroy us. We have told ourselves that we had no choice. She gestured toward the image of the Defiance, floating alone among the Concorde warships. Today, a predator species looked at annihilation and chose honor. They chose to defend rather than attack. They chose to die with dignity rather than live as conquerors. They showed us what we have forgotten. Her voice grew stronger. The measure of a species is not what they are capable of doing. It is what they choose not to do. The Vrankai chose to be predators. They embraced their nature and destroyed everything they touched. But humans are different. They carry the same instincts, but they fight against them. They struggle every day to be better than their blood demands. She looked directly at the council. They are doing what we have failed to do. They are becoming more than their nature. And if we destroy them, we become exactly what we have always feared. We become the monsters. The transmission ended. The following weeks were the most chaotic in galactic history. The Concorde fractured. Species that had trusted their leaders for millennia now demanded answers. Some called for the founding species to be punished. Others defended the sterilizations as necessary evils. Civil unrest spread across hundreds of worlds. But amid the chaos, something remarkable happened. The vote for war against humanity failed. Not because the Council chose wisely, but because the Council no longer had the power to choose. Their authority had been shattered along with their secrets. No one trusted them to make decisions anymore. Humanity was spared, not by mercy, but by chaos. Captain Chun was finally allowed to speak with the Concorde directly. Real talks. Real negotiations. Real attempts at understanding. She learned the truth about the test, about the lies, about the sterilizations. She learned that her species had been moments away from extinction, and she responded with something that no one expected: forgiveness. You were afraid, she told the Council. Fear makes people do terrible things. We know this better than anyone. Our history is filled with crimes committed by frightened people who thought they had no choice. She looked at Cathalun, who stood apart from the other leaders. You had a choice. You just forgot it. We can help you remember. 5 years later, the galaxy was a different place. The Concorde still existed, but it was transformed. The founding species no longer held absolute power. New voices had joined the Council, including humanity's. The Defiance was no longer a warship. It had become a diplomatic vessel, carrying representatives to far corners of the galaxy. Its mission was simple: find the worlds that have been marked for sterilization, but not yet destroyed. Reach them before the old protocols could be carried out. Offer them a choice that no one had offered before. Captain Chun led the mission herself. She was older now, with gray appearing in her black hair, but her eyes were still calm and determined. And beside her, serving as an advisor and guide, was Cathalun. The ancient Valkyrie had been stripped of her titles and her position. Her own people considered her a traitor. But she had found something else, a purpose that gave her peace after 4,000 years of guilt. One evening, as the Defiance traveled through space toward another world marked for death, Chun found Cathalun standing alone at an observation window. Stars streamed past, cold and beautiful. May I ask you something? Chun said. Of course. Why did you do it? You risked everything. Your reputation. Your career. Your life. Why? Cathalun was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice soft and ancient. Because you frightened me. When I read the scan data from your ship, I felt fear like I had not felt since the Vrankai. Every instinct told me you were a threat. Every memory told me to destroy you before it was too late. She turned to look at Chun. But you frightened yourselves too. You carried the same fear. You looked at your own nature and saw the monster inside. And instead of embracing it, you fought it. Every day, every generation. You built a civilization that was constantly at war with itself, not because you wanted to fight, but because you refused to stop trying to be better. Her silver scales seemed to glow in the starlight. That is what made you different. That is what gave me hope. If predators could learn to fight their own nature, then perhaps the rest of us could learn to fight our fear. Chum smiled. And have you? Learned to fight your fear? Kathaloon returned the smile, a rare expression on her ancient face. I am trying. Every day. It is difficult, but I think I understand now why you humans find it worthwhile. The Defiance continued on its journey, carrying hope to worlds that had been condemned to die far behind them on 100 planets. Beings of different species were reading new entries in the Galactic database. Under the classification for Homo sapiens, the old warnings had been removed. The threat levels had been deleted. In their place was a new designation one that had never existed before. The historians who wrote it had argued for days about the right word. In the end, they had chosen something simple, something that captured what humanity represented to a galaxy that had spent 12,000 years living in fear. The classification read, Humanity Status, HOPAND across the stars. For the first time in millennia, people began to believe that the future might be better than the past.